on episode 13 of VIP Boxing's Bell2Bell podcast. You can watch us on VIP YouTube, see these three gorgeous faces there, or follow us on Spotify, where you can download and get us all in glorious audio tune, if that's what they say. I'm Steve Lillis, and as usual, we have my co-host, Mr. John Evans, who's about 5 miles up the road in Oldham, or might even be a bit closer than that from me. And of course, we're alongside John Evans this week, Mr. Jazza Dickens, a fine fighter who's now getting his just rewards after the recent MTK Golden Contract victory. He's gone all posh on us. He's usually in a car or laying on his sofa doing Zoom calls. Now he's got all his belts, his photos of Georgie Vaughan and Derry Matthews. He you know, we have to go through his agent now. Anyway, how's your agent, Jazza? And I guess you're all ready for all comers at featherweight.
I've been trying to get on this podcast for over 3 years, and now you have had me on since I won my last fight.
Glory hunters, Jazza. That's what we are.
That's right. John's right. We're glory hunters. We only talk to you when you're winning, but you can't accuse us two of that. We've been there all the way with you. Yeah. Go back a long way to the VIP days, mate, which is, God, I bet you even can't remember that far back, Jazza. It was that long ago. It
actually does seem like another career, Steve. It really does.
Jazza, just look next to your left elbow there. You've got a challenge belt, and that in your cabinet. And I was there the night you won that, on the night of the Hungarians at Liverpool Olympia, when it must have been about -5 degrees. And you thought, was it Di Davis?
Di Davis, yeah.
And yeah, that's the worst set of opponents I've ever seen in my life. Okay.
Know what happened that night, Steve? I weighed in at super bantamweight 8 stone 10, and he got told the fight was at 9 stone, apparently. So he weighed in bang on the weight, and I weighed in bang on the weight, but we were different weights. So he couldn't win the belt, and I could, but we took the fight anyway.
That's the coldest venue in Britain, isn't it?
Liverpool Olympia. You've seen those changing rooms there?
Yeah. Shocking. Absolutely shocking. If anyone's listening to this wants to see a bad opponent, Ryan Burnett made his debut on that show, and he fought a guy who looked like Billy Casper from Kes. He looked like he got his kit out of a spare kit. He'd never had a pair of gloves on in his life. And you want to go on YouTube and watch Ryan Burnett's debut. And that's for sure that Jazza won his challenge belt on.
I don't, you know what, John? I don't remember that show. You know, it reminds me hearing those stories of these Americans that used to come over for Mickey Duff shows in the 70s and all have the same gown on. They'd all have the same different training shoes on. Outrageous stuff. And that reminds me of those sort of days. But you know what, John? I bet you love that night because you're remembering it and you're speaking about it with a smile on your face.
Oh, I love it. Yeah. When you look at where Jazza is now and you've got the memories of days like that. I remember him walking around the Devi Hotel on a dinner show in his full kit and hand wraps when he fought Christian Late. So right from the start. And it's good to see Jazza getting his reward.
Another story, that Christian Late actually came off holiday the day before, and because the opponent pulled through, he took the fight on it on must have been less than 24 hours notice. And went easy on me.
And before we go on, Jazz, and start the podcast, any fight news, any news you can give us on what's happening with you? You know, I know you're still wallowing in your success of that great win against another friend of ours, Ryan Walsh, but is there any definitive fight news or possible fight news?
Nothing set just yet. Nothing set as like the pandemic and the COVID and stuff like that. There's no fights allowed here, but there's fights allowed in America. So I've put that fight behind me now, and I'm looking forward to what could come. And I believe that it could be a world title. I've got 2 European titles. I've won a belt at every level apart from world titles. So yeah, that's what we're looking for, a world title.
Brilliant. For those of you listening to Bell2Bell for the first time, the three of us have picked out a couple of topics each. We discuss each topic for exactly 3 minutes. And what happens, John, after the end of the 3 minutes, whether you're talking or not? Yeah, Jamie Moore didn't like it last week. John kept interrupting him. He weren't happy at all. Jamie said he's never going to speak to John Evans again or invite him down to his gym. So it's 6 3-minute rounds of chat. And if you're still talking when the bell sounds, you are straight back to your corner. If you don't get the gist of this, if you're listening for the first time, you soon will. John, round 1 to you.
Let's just start the timer going. Right, let's talk about Chris Eubank Jr. He's just signed a deal with the Sauerlands. I think it's a shot in the arm for the middleweight division, this. We all know Eubank's limitations. We've all seen them a couple of times. But you can't argue that he's exciting. He's a character. He brings attention. He brings excitement. When he gets the right opponent in front of him, I think he's great to watch. Lets those hands go, isn't scared of mixing it. And when you look down the top names at middleweight these days, it's just name after name of guys that can give Eubank an entertaining fight. The division's probably lost a little bit since Canelo and Golovkin sorted out the differences, and Canelo's gone and Golovkin's maybe just lost half a step. But can you imagine Eubank against Jamel Charlo? Imagine Eubank against Munguia. Imagine Eubank against Golovkin now. And the one for me, and it's the British fight I would love the most. Yeah. Imagine Chris Eubank Jr. against Liam Williams. Let's just get Eubank Jr. in the mix with these fights. Let's get some excitement going, and let's get Eubank in this middleweight mix.
John, I was going to repeat what you said. He's a character. People want to read about him. He's one of the few, go back to newspapers. He's one of the few fighters who gets great, extensive coverage in newspapers when he speaks and talks. They pull him out for previews. I wonder how he's going to get his chance. I can't see the PBC helping him because he was doing bits with them. They got Jamel Charlo. Andrade looks, taken up with one fight and another, the Liam Williams fight. Murata's a possibility to go to Japan. I think it's going to be hard for him to get that breakthrough, but Liam Williams is the fight I'd love to see. Imagine that if Andrade moves up the super middleweight, they have that for the vacant WBO super middleweight. How good would that be for domestic boxing?
I believe that would be a great fight for for Williams as well. I think that Williams deserves a big fight like that, a big name, and I think I actually believe Williams will win that fight. But going with the Sauerland's a top company, and he's had great cards, Eubank, and I think he's played them right as well. For his talents, he's a really good fighter, but he's played his cards really well.
Yeah, it's easy for lads of famous sportsmen to take the easy way, isn't it? And maybe rest on the father's laurels. But I think it's one thing you can't accuse Eubank of doing. I think he's a hard worker and he's a hard lad, isn't he? I think he's quite willing to put himself in harm's way. The ego's there. He's got that famous Eubank ego. And as I say, we've seen him come up short in the same way a couple of times to George Groves and Billy Joe. You can outbox him. He is going to plant his feet and stuff. But when you get the right opponent, he's made for TV. And I just think there's a real list of exciting fights with merit middleweight.
I'm glad you picked up on hard work, John, because although he changes trainers often, he lives in that gym. If I've been around him, that's what I will say about him. Jazza's not happy there, John. Hey, John's a serious rule maker. Right, this is the final countdown for round 2, and I'm thinking of I was speaking to someone, Richard Hubbard, who I do some work with this morning, and this sort of coming to my mind after speaking with Richard. And it's like, Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury looking to close their careers. They're lined up, it seems, unless Wilder throws a spanner in the works for, two fights. The money they're going to amass from those 2 fights is colossal. And after that, whoever's standing after those 2 fights, or even one of them, if one of them wins convincingly and the other walks away, they are going to be the number 1. There is nothing to prove in the world. Is the man standing going to want to fight an Alexander Usyk, who they can undoubtedly beat, who could make them look bad, and that they will finish that 2-fight series. And the man standing at the end is the boss of the heavyweight division. No arguments from anyone in the world. And you wonder, all that money they amassed, will they really want to carry on? What else would there be for them to achieve? Joshua would have made a fortune. He could have gone away and go promote him, whatever he's looking at doing with his company. And I think, Fury, he says he has to be kept busy. He could go and do the wrestling for a year because he loved it when he did the WWE last time. And I mean this in the nicest way. He was with like-minded cranks like him, the same sort of personalities. And then he could maybe go and do his film. I know there's talk of a film for him to do with Jason Statham where he plays some sort of apprentice superhero, I'm hearing. He could go away, do them, and he would come back. He could come back 3 years later. The Gypsy King's still going to take on all comers. And during those 2-3 years away, he could just be digging out every boxer there is still to make sure he's there. But I don't see what they've got to prove and what's left for them to fight after this 2-fight series.
Go on, Jazz.
Oh yeah, we've only got a minute, so I'll be quick. I think the Gypsy King wins and rules the division, but I do believe that Tyson is looking for the fight a bit more than Joshua. I think that Joshua's a smart man, and I don't know. I think Fury wants him, but Joshua doesn't need him. I don't know. Will it happen? I don't know. I hope it does. I think if these two people were in a childlike brain, they would love these dancing partners for the future. They've come across it now, and I hope it can happen.
We're in a different era as well, aren't we? I don't think we're going to get a heavyweight champion ruling for a decade like Vladimir Klitschko or like Joe Louis did before. I think you're right, Steve. I think money talks, and if Fury's beaten Joshua twice, why not go and earn a few extra quid in WWE? Go on, Jazza.
Jazza, punching pensions.
Yes, I would love to see it. We always think as a fighter, don't we? How could boxing be set up for the future of boxing, and then the retiring boxers? I would love to see something put in place, but there's absolutely nothing there for fighters. I don't know how it could work. I would love to get the boxing community's ideas on how it could work. Maybe fighters could pay into some sort of scheme with the British Boxing Board of Control to put them in a position where they can give back. But then there's so many fighters who were taken from the sport. It's hard to see who really deserves it and who doesn't, because I think there's a lot of fighters who have 15 fights, 20 fights. They give years to the sport and then they come away from it with absolutely nothing. So it's a sad thing to see.
Yeah, I think, with the penalty, Jamie Moore is a topic quite close to Jamie Moore's heart, this, Jazza, and I'm sure he'd speak about it with you. But I just wonder, I'd love the idea of boxers putting something in if they could, but I think there's so many boxers out there who are going around the circuit just about covering their fights by paying ticket money, and others that are journeymen going around earning their 1,800 quid for 4 rounds every Saturday or 2.5 grand for 6 rounds on a TV show. And I think persuading them fighters to put in 15% of their purse to a pension is going to be really hard. I think it's going to take what it really needs is some independent pension company to maybe come in and try and speak with these fighters. But I think it's going to be very, very hard, because it's been tried before. I think Barry McGuigan and Mickey Cantwell, I think that was be part of their plan when they had that boxers union. But it all fell apart. And I think it's so much different for boxers than footballers who have their money put in these pensions from an early age and get the sportsman's pension that matures at 35. I think it's really, really difficult. And I'm sure the board would help, but I'm not sure the percentage of fighters that would, Jazza. You go, Jazza, you're hopefully moving on to the big money now, but for much of your early career, you wouldn't have been able to afford to put money into a pension scheme. And these guys that are earning a couple grand a month from boxing, they just can't afford it. So they might be young with 3 kids, that sort of thing. I don't know what John thinks, how he would plan it.
I was just thinking that, say a boxer who's been successful now and earning 50 grand for a fight, if they only fight twice a year and you've got a family, you don't really want to be handing a percentage of your purse over. I was just thinking then while Jazza was talking, could it be done on once a show sold X amount pounds worth of tickets, could there then be a percentage levy taken off that? Therefore, you're only penalising the big shows, the big promoters and things like that. It's very complicated, but as we said with Jamie, something's got to be put in place.
I'd love it too.
Right, we're on to it's time to gamble for a lot of fighters now. I know we're just about to get the next batch of shows announced, but when you add up the total number of fights, it's only 60 or 70 fights in total. That means when you take journeymen into account, probably 100 different fighters are going to earn a few quid. During my last show, we seemed to have 2 different ways of going at it, didn't we? Sky were very competitive, top to bottom, 6 pretty evenly matched fights, whereas BT were a bit more willing to showcase prospects against journeymen. I think young Jamie Quinn has never been on TV as much as he was over the last 6 months. But I just wonder if that might change this time. This isn't a short-term thing, is it? This is going to be a long-term thing, and the sport's got to keep moving. So we're going to get fights like Josh Kelly fighting David Avanesian, having not boxed for over a year. Josh Warrington straight in with Kanzu, having not boxed since October 2019. Hopefully Fury goes in with Joshua and he's not boxed since last February. So we're going to get a lot more early tests. We might get a lot more careers coming to an abrupt halt. We might get people catapulted to fame a lot quicker than we expected. But it's time to gamble now, and I think all fighters are going to have to take these chances when they come.
Jazza, I think you'll be good to comment on that.
Yeah, I think I like it. I like it because the fighters who are there to fight, who are going to give all to the sport. I had a friend, me Shakespeare, he took a chance 2 days' notice on Sky Sports. He killed himself to make the weight, but he took his chance, you know what I mean? And he'll get another chance because of it. But there's a lot of people, it'll separate the shite from the good, you know what I mean? A lot of people, right? There's one, boxing, you're going to have a fight now. On 2, there's no nightclubs, so you can't go there and tell women that you're a fighter. so I think it can be a really good thing, and I think that the creative people in the sport are going to survive through these hard times. We'll see who the fighters are.
I tell you what, Jazz has always taken on all comers. He's absolutely chuffed that these guys can't take 3-4 walks before they have access. He's in his element with lockdown. This is the best boxing's ever been for Jazza. No one can. But no, you know, it is right. And a couple of things. You know, what's funny? Journeyman getting noticed for fights. I know a journeyman that's already been booked for a fight for a show for the end of February. So you know, these journeymen get usually. They finish on a Saturday. They hope the phone's going to ring on a Monday. I know a journeyman who's in training for a fight. I think it's right at the end of February. So they're getting noticed. But John, as I repeat so often on here, my big fear is fighters who were at their peak at the end of this, when it all started, this pandemic, who haven't had action, who could just be on that slide. And, you know, I wonder where, you know, Josh Warrington won't be finished, but will he be the fighter he was 18 months ago? Because that was a man.
We'll see.
Of his powers. There's a man. You challenge Josh Warrington.
Go on, Steve.
Right. My final round for it is Amir For It. Amir Khan, he's out in Dubai, whether he's enjoying the good life out there, his wife, and representing Mr. Sullivan and the WBC and everything like that. And it's great to see him involved on that side, but he's now talking up the Kell Brook fight. Now, you know, anyone who listens to this who knows me, will not have a word against Amir Khan. If you knock Amir Khan, you're knocking me. I love him. And he's talking up the Brook fight, but what is it unfair that although they're both over the top, should we say, I didn't want to use the word shot, whatever, they're both not what they were. You know, that fight still has great interest to the casual customer in this country. You think there's great fights coming up. Warrington Zoo, Frampton Herring's going to happen in February or late February or March. And Josh Taylor against Ramirez for all them wonderful super lightweight belts. That fight will mean more to people than any of those 3 great fights. Now, is that wrong?
Personally, yeah, I think it is.
Yeah.
I love Amir as well, but those 2 guys have stopped that fight happening for the last 5 years. Jazza will know better than anybody. If 2 fighters want a fight to happen, it'll happen. You know, if 2 guys make it clear to the promoter who works for them, it always gets forgotten, that they want to fight this man, it'll happen. And those 2 have found enough reasons not to face each other. And it all purely comes down to neither of them wants to lose to the hated rival. And now they've decided, once they're both past the best, we've not got much to lose, we'll cash out. I think it is a bit sad that it'll overshadow, you know, some massive fights. But I'm not going to lie, I'll watch it. I'll watch every second of it. And the build-up will be great.
Taylor Ramirez might be ignored over it if they're a week apart. Sorry, Jazza.
I think that the lads, you should strike while the iron's hot to get it, but I think the lads always knew that this fight was going to be there at the end. When this time came, they always knew that we'd watch it. So as a fighter, I can't begrudge them 2 lads the big payday when they both know that they are past the best.
Yeah, I don't begrudge them the payday. I'll just get a bit riled if they're fighting one week for more money than what Taylor and Ramirez are going to get, or Frampton and Herring. But you know what? You said something like you strike while the iron's hot. And that iron has always been smouldering for that fight, and still it is. I don't think you could have put it any better, Jazza.
Can you imagine it at its absolute peak, though? Can you imagine Carn and Brook at the City of Manchester Stadium 3 or 4 years ago?
Hey,
it would have been fantastic, wouldn't it?
John, when they were talking about it at Bolton Stadium, as a Macron, when it was the Macron, whatever it was called, there would have been 35,000 in there that night. There would have been that many in there, but it was still...
Time anyway, Jazz's last topic.
Your last topic.
My last topic, right? Every time someone drops the ball in boxing, people just have a go. I follow all the top channels on YouTube, this one being them. But you don't do it, you're nice people. But what we see is someone drops the ball, whether that be a manager, a boxer, a referee, anyone in boxing, everyone's there. It's the same people from the same channels giving these people a load of shit because they've dropped the ball. But what they don't see, we might be giving, say for instance, Deontay Wilder, we all call him Bum Dosser, weren't we? Everyone was calling him Bum Dosser. But now, it's like, I'm looking at him thinking, don't you realise this man's got fucking feelings? What happens if the Bum Dosser goes and puts the fucking noose around his neck and we're all sitting here saying, oh, that's his problem? We jump on people because they make mistakes. I think that we should be lifting each other up, because I don't want to watch that shit anymore. It's dark, it's negative. I want to see nice happiness and positivity and support through the boxing community, because I think the people getting into boxing who aren't actually the fighters is dividing people and their opinions within this beautiful community that we've got.
Funnily enough, Jazza, me and Lillis spoke at this today, and I was wondering if people are coming into boxing, the people doing the interviewing, the people doing the talking are coming into it from different backgrounds and different sports. And there's a way to speak to people in boxing, and there's a way to conduct yourself and act. And I don't think we do it in the right way. And I just wonder if part of that comes into it. They wouldn't dare say this to anybody's face, but there's also, if you've got a problem, take it up in private. Keep things on the low with people in boxing. I just wonder if people are coming into this from different sports, different backgrounds, and just treating boxers in the same way that they would a footballer or a cricketer, and it doesn't work like that, I don't think.
You know what? No. A lot of these people who go doing this, and you are right, Jazza, about, boxers have feelings, that you might all be macho men, but you have feelings. You'd have been hurt by things that have been, you've lost a couple of times. You'll be hurt by what's said about you when they're lost. If people are wrong, you will be hurt. You'll take constructive criticism on the chin, but you won't take just being rubbish. No, I get that. And you know what? I think a lot of it is social media, as great as it's been for boxers, for selling themselves. Every mug has a voice now, and it's how these people find their way of staying relevant. There's nothing constructive. They never go to a show and meet the boxers and get to know you, where you can make a point to them like you've got feelings, you've got emotions, Jazza. And, you tell me how you felt when, you've had criticism in the past.
Yeah, well, I don't take it personal, but I do know just people who aren't like me, and I know there's like big fellas who are like little children inside, do you know what I mean? And I know that they will be hurting bad, and they take the knocks, do you know what I mean? And they go and retire, but these people are still on the keyboard like that. He can't do this and he can't do that. So if I see you, I'm going to knock you out.
No,
it's like a footballer. Say a footballer scores an own goal in the Merseyside derby, Jazza. He'll get stick. But the next week he's got a chance to come back from that, and it's all. Yeah. If he scores the winner in the next game, it's all forgotten. A boxer is getting beaten up and knocked out in front of a paying crowd, and he won't get a chance to redeem himself for 9 or 10 months. And I think that's the major difference. I think people, you can give your constructive criticism, but especially if you're in a position where you're trying to make a living off YouTube channels and trying to make a living interviewing, I just think you should think twice maybe and rein it in a bit.
We fight for a living. That's who we are. Professional fighters, we fight for a living. We don't want these people coming into our sport who are talking a lot and putting divides in between our beautiful sport.
John, I made a great point about the footballers there, and I can do one even quicker than a week. Last night, guy playing in goal for Brighton, Jason Still, made a howler of all howlers in the last minute of injury time against Newport. Shocking howler. It was absolutely awful for a keeper. You shouldn't make it in a Sunday league. That's not being criticism. Jason Still admitted it was a terrible mistake he made. He had the chance to put it right half an hour later at the end of extra time, and he did it by saving 4 penalties. And who was the first man? Sky went and interviewed at the end, or BT Sport went and interviewed after extra time. You've got to get Jason Still.
We've gone way over the 3 minutes.
Go on, Jazza, finish up.
I'd love to see the YouTube comment, the Twitter comments at half time, and then the same people commenting after the game.
Yeah. Jason Still. So there you go. And so the John's football analogy, that is absolutely spot on. But Jazza, it's been good having John, my pal John, on as always, my co-host, and we've had Jazza Dickens on from his posh office there. I don't know where he is, but he's got all those belts behind him. I'm not having them their ease, but John Evans tells me they are.
Yeah, thank you for having me, lads. I really enjoyed it. I've been trying to get on for years, and I'm finally happy day.
Right, John Evans, thank you, John. I'll speak to you in the week, John. Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Jazza.
And Jazza, thank you very much indeed for your time this evening.
Great.
For all boxing info, news, and latest interviews, amateur and pro across the north, click and subscribe. VIP Boxing Promotions. Also, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.